So we're here in the bell tower of the Congregational Church on East Fulton Street. And this, to my right, is the clock that runs the chimes. There are 10 bells in this tower. And we're here because this is the 100th anniversary of the chimes and this mechanism here that's been for a century telling the time and chiming the hour and the quarter hour for the entire city. So this is a real event. This is one of the most historic places in our city. This tower, I think, was built in 1894, correct?
Yeah.
And the chimes came in 1923. And to my right here is Jeremy Sprague. He is the clock master. He's the one who runs. Now, he doesn't look like Quasimodo.
That's his
But
middle name.
he's the bell ringer of Gloversville.
I think it's special. I mean, when I first saw it, I fell in love. It was like 20 years ago. But it's special, I think, because in the 1950s and 1960s, so many things were space age new, change, and a lot of mechanical clocks were replaced with convenient electric mechanisms. But this one has stayed. The church and the community, they've kept it as is, and we've not modified things, and it's been operating for 100 years.
Right. And so, yeah, we have, so this is a pretty historic thing. And as I told Jeremy today, this is incredibly important for Gloversville because it's part of our heritage and it unifies us.
Hello and welcome. I am Dr. Matt Patucci, President of the Church. Thank you for coming to our celebration and setting your clocks back. Fear not, my speech will be short. We tell people that the first Congregational Church of Gloversville is 171 years old. It is a number that requires some explanation. The church started when George Washington was president in 1793. So one could argue that the church is 230 years old. Back then, Congregationalists and Presbyterians worshiped together. Even today, if you brought someone into a Congregational or a Presbyterian church blindfolded, they'd be hard-pressed to tell the difference. For the people who know a lot about various styles of Protestantism, for the Presbyterians have a bishop and a hierarchy, and Congregationalists do not. In 1849, the Congregationalists left the Presbyterians and laid the cornerstone of the church that we are standing in today. 3 years later, the church opened. It is how we set the church's age at 171 years. Just as an aside, this church did not burn down. In the 1960s, the church leadership renovated, making the modern church smaller. It was for economic reasons, and there was no bonfire. The bell tower, however, has a slightly different timeline. The original bell tower had only one bell rung by pulling on a rope. Back then, it was also the town's fire bell. Later, they added 11 chimes and a clock to ring them. That mechanism is 100 years old. So we celebrate that 100th year anniversary today. For those of you who have math anxiety, I apologize. But like many things about our church, our history is complicated. As a church, we are open and affirming. That means we accept anybody who wants to get closer to God, even if they hate mathematics. We rarely even mention numbers as long as you're not in the leadership committee. Well, maybe once a year, we go over the budget and ask for pledges. What we do love is to make a joyful noise. And our bell tower is heard all over downtown, mostly with great joy. Our bell tower is heard, oh, I'm sorry. However, we understand there are some complaints because the bell rings from 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. when most people are asleep. I intend to explore what to do about that, but I'm not sure I can change it. I love history. Jeremy Sprague will give you more of an account of our bell tower and its comparison with other bell towers. After that, Amy Davis will give us a recital using the tower bells. Then the courageous among us will go on a tour, climb the stairs, and see the tower from the inside. As I understand it, someone will wear a GoPro device and will record what it looks like for others who love to stay closer to the ground. After that course, we'll have refreshments. At least that's the plan. One thing our church learned to live with is that no plan survives contact with reality. So again, using radical honesty, that's what we hope is the plan. But we will play it out by ear. In the back is a friend of the church, Sarita. She is a local model. Why she's wearing the sash to talk about her agency. Thank you for coming, Sarita. You always make the place more beautiful. So, thank you for coming. Our bell tower celebration, and enjoy. Next will be Jeremy. Next, Jeremy will give us that history.
So I'm Jeremy Sprague, and they asked me to say a few words, but my wife points out that, be careful, you ask an engineer what time it is, and they'll tell you how to build a clock. So I happen to have a book, Clock Towers and How to Build It, and I'd like to go through this with you right now. No. So I'd just like to tell you a little bit about why I appreciate the clock. So I'll start by talking about me. It's going to be all about me. Well, just the beginning about me. So this all started with I was a trustee like 22 years ago in this church, and there was a problem with the clock. There was a part that needed replacing. So it all started with this. So this is a sprocket that had something got wrong and blah blah blah. But it needed to be replaced. But it's an oddball. You can't just buy a new one. It's a box chain sprocket. They're not so common now. So the place where I worked, Spalding Sports. They graciously said that they would make a new one, right? So I bought a similar sprocket, and the machinist made a new one out of that. So then the clock was working again. And so that was with a quarter-hour chime. So for a while, the quarter-hour chimes weren't working. But that's when that's when I saw the clock for the first time. And when I first went up there with the trustees to look at this thing, it was love at first sight. It's an old mechanical thing. It's big. Some of you've seen it, but it's big. It's wide. Is this wide? It's taller than I am, and it ticks, and it rings these huge bells, and it's loud up there, and it makes a noise, and the floor shakes. I loved it. I thought it was really good. So we fixed that, and ever since then, I've been fascinated by this. It's I never knew about clocks before. They say I'm the clock master. I don't know, I wouldn't say that, but I've learned a lot about this clock and some other clocks. So I've enjoyed learning about clocks and tower clocks and the history and mechanical devices and what makes them go faster, slower, and all the different things that affect them. So I've really liked it. And I would enjoy visits here on Mondays. When I worked at Spalding, I'd come here after work, and it was kind of like my quiet time. I'd wait for it to strike so I could know exactly when it was, and I'd make little adjustments and calculate how many pennies to put on the bob to make it go a little faster, slower. And that was my weekly visit, but that was like a quiet meditation time. It was kind of nice. But I've also enjoyed obsessing about the details of what changes the rate. And with Larry Doubleday, we have spent hours up there. I know it's hours. We spent hours talking about how to measure it and how to make it go faster, slower. And with Larry, we have a camera up there. So when it's a motion sensing camera, so when the main bell strikes the hour, it moves and it records a little video and it sends it to us. And there's a so-called atomic clock there. We can see exactly what time that happened. And we've worked on different versions of something we can remote control with magnets to make the bob go, to make the pendulum swing a little faster or slower. So it's been a fun hobby, you know, it's been fun. And I've certainly enjoyed the time with Larry. It's beyond just talking about clocks. I've really enjoyed the time spending there with Larry. And he's done a lot for this. So that's kind of my background. But we have, with all the tinkering, we've made some improvements, but we have kept the original clock the same. So we have not removed anything. We want to keep this intact. I mean, so we've added additional switches so the original ones don't completely wear out. So like it turns the weights on and stuff. But we've added stuff, bolted it on, haven't drilled any holes in it or anything. So it's all original, and we can remove what we've added if needed. So it's really been like a hobby, and I've enjoyed it. People say, thank you for taking care of the clock, but it's the other way around. Thank you to everybody here for allowing me to have this hobby. I feel a little spoiled. I think it's great. I've really enjoyed it. So the thanks really should go to other people, right? So obviously all the church members within the last generation and before who have spent hours taking care of this, right? I mean, Larry Doubleday, obviously, Earl Hogue. I remember going up there with him, and he would clean out stuff out of the belfry, and lots of others. I can't name everybody involved, but I know that lots of other people have put a lot of time in. And Larry and others who finally put good net, because I put some netting up to try to keep the pigeons out. But finally, other people came up with a better way, and so pigeons, our belfry is pigeon-free, which is a big deal. If you've ever used a snow shovel to remove all the pigeon mess out of the garbage bags. So, and also thanks to Ann Lee Clow, who was the musician who played the bells so often. So Ann Lee. And of course, thank you to Hiram Darling and his wife. And we should always remember, Estella Freaker Darling. So thank you to them for making the gift in the original gift in the first place. But also, thanks to the church trustees and the church congregation all through the last 100 years, who would pay the Castelline jewelry, first Louis and then Tony, and they would come up and set the clock when needed. But what they did really went beyond a business thing, right? They gave the clock to TLC and really helped maintain this gem in our community. So thank you to the Castelline brothers and the church trustees all through those years. So, and let me tell you why the chimes are special. Because going up and taking care of it, it's not, if somebody had to pay somebody's time to actually go up and do all that work through those years, there's some maintenance required, and a lot of places with tower clocks, mechanical tower clocks, would replace the insides with, you think about the 1950s and 1960s, modern space age, that was a cool thing. It was cool to have modern, new, and to replace out with the old and in with the new technology. So a lot of these old mechanical, clunky, problem maintenance clock mechanisms were replaced by convenient, accurate electric timepieces, right? So the clock is still being used, but the heart of it is being, and so many of these tower clocks, is being replaced with electric drive. So, but not this one. We have the original one that's been working for 100 years. It's special. There are others around, but not all of them are purely mechanical like this. So I think that's really special. So the clock is unmodified and it operates with its original components, and that's kind of the beauty of this mechanical device. It's consistency, right? It's been going for 100 years. And so it's ticked away through good times and bad times. And there's a little brochure with things factual stuff that I wrote about the clock. But there's a mention about how this has been consistent and it has worked through the good times and bad times, but it's always going to be going on. So it's kind of nice to have something you can rely on like that. And as I said, I used to come here weekly before we kind of started to automate this, but I used to come here weekly, and it was the meditation. It was really nice. It was very nice. So the quietness in the bell tower, along with the clock, ticking away like it always did, it was very enjoyable, very satisfying, and I thank everybody for that. So finally, thank you to all of you, everybody who's here today, who's turned out. at work, people are, oh, what are you doing this weekend? Oh, I'm going to a 100th birthday party. They're like, oh, that's nice. Oh, who is it? Oh, it's for a clock. So, but thank you for coming to the birthday party for the clock. It really honors the clock. It honors what we have here. It honors our community. So, thank you for that. And I hope people go and look at it.
I have a modification to announce. I apologize, Vince. You were in my original speech, and then I rewrote it 5 times, and somehow it wasn't there. And I just read what's in front of me because I'm a little nervous up here. However, Vince DeSantis is a friend of mine, and he's the mayor of Gloversville. He is generously is going to give us a short speech now on how this church has affected the community. Thank you, Vince. I hope I'm still your friend.
I think what Jeremy said is really important, that connection with the past and the fact that the clock is the same clock with the same mechanism as it was 100 years ago, and it's been chiming and telling the time for the community for 100 years consistently. But it's more than just telling time to this community. I can remember, this was several years ago, and I was at home, and my wife and I were, it was in the wintertime, and it was dark early, and it might have been sometime in the early evening, maybe 6 or 7 o'clock, and we were just reading. We didn't have anything on, and the clock chimed, because I only live a couple of blocks away from here. And my wife said, those bells are so unifying. And I thought about that, about what those bells mean to the community. They unify the community. The sound, it's this nonverbal communication that we're all here together. And we're all hearing the chimes together. And it sort of unifies our community. So it connects us to one another. And, we live in such a pluralistic society today. And as time goes on, after, that experience, we have social media, we have people going in every direction, and there's a lot of different cultures, and that's a good thing. Diversity is a very good thing. But there's something about a community, and the word community comes from the Latin, as one, cum unity, and it means that we live together as one. And so these bells, and the fact that they're here, and the fact that the work that's been done by Jeremy and so many people before him to keep this going, connects us to each other and connects us to our past, our past. And so I don't want to, I have this something that was written in 1892 by the first pastor of this church. And it's about Gloversville. And this was written by him. His name was Homer Dunning. Reverend Homer Dunning was the pastor. He came to Gloversville in 1852 to be the pastor of this church. And he was the pastor for 40 years. So in 1892, he's writing about, there's the 40th anniversary of the founding of this congregation. And he's writing about his first impressions when he came here in 1852. So we have a first-hand impression of the village of Gloversville in 1852. And he writes, in 1852, when I came here, the population was, by the by the enumeration taken on September 27th of that year, 1,318 people in the village of Gloversville, 1,318 people. The number of houses was 250. The place seemed to be just shaking off the swaddling clothes of its infancy. It was incorporated on the 14th of January, 1853. The place and the people impressed me from the first as unique, and I have never seen another just like it. The people were mainly families of sound stock, inheriting the qualities of a rugged ancestry, industrious, enterprising, thrifty, moral, and religious. There was not much literary culture, but an unusually high average of intelligence. It was a community of families mostly living each in its own house in unusual comfort and even luxury. The people manufacturing their goods in their own houses or on their own premises. There were few houses to let. I found it difficult to find one. There were almost no really poor people in the place. Perhaps one reason was that there were no liquor saloons allowed. The fact that all were engaged in the same business, while it provoked some jealousies and rivalries, nevertheless created a kind of community of feeling. And the isolation of the place developed a strong feeling of local pride and public spirit. The travel abroad in the sale of goods also sharpened up the wits of the businessmen and brought back new ideas and stimulus to enterprise and improvement. The community, though small, was full of vitality and vigor, and of ambition and faith in the future growth and development of the place. Almost everybody attended church regularly, twice or even 3 times a day. The prayer meetings were well attended. There was little open immorality or vice. The only thing that was especially deficient was educational advantages, only partially supplied by the academy at Kingsborough. And that deficiency was mainly owing to the youth of the village, and was soon met, in part at least, by the establishment of the Gloversville Seminary and subsequently into the present high school. So this is what he reported in 1892, about 1852. So this is not only the congregation, but there's a continuity, a unity. This is so important to a community. And I hope that those bells chime every quarter hour for another 100 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Vince. That was very informative and taught me about Gloversville, and I lived here. I was born here, and then went away and then came back. Now, Amy, I don't even know what you look like. Is she here? There you are. Amy, tell me what you're going to do.
So I'm going to play some things on the time.
Okay, and you're going to do that in the tower itself?
Yes.
All right, and how long will it take you to get there?
5 minutes.
Okay, sure. That's running up those stairs, 5 minutes. I guess I'm just so old. It would take me a lot longer. So, okay. So I guess what we can do is have refreshments, and then we'll hear hear the bells. No one's going to talk anymore. After that, there'll be tours of the tower for among the people who are brave, or braver than me, anyways. Oh, I see my grandson's raising his hand. Okay, you're on. Okay. All right, so thank you for putting up with us. And Vince, I apologize again as publicly as I can. I knew you were coming, and I don't know how I missed it by speech. But thank you all.